Hey everyone. First off, happy Memorial Day to those observing. Second, despite all the discourse over how soon because it's the Mandalorian Grogu has naturally come in number one this weekend with its take so far domestically over $100 million. So, as the whole debate about over what it means for the future Saw going forward, I will say this: it's not the first time that they've centered a spin-off around a cute non-human character, her, and to demonstrate this, I thought I would take a look at someone's been resisting and putting energy into for a while to prove this. That's right. As today marks the 49th anniversary of the whole saga, I'm finally caving and looking at the 1980s TV movies known collectively as Star Wars Ewok Adventures. So, let's begin. Let's start with the first of these ultimately two spin offs, unless that being 1984's Caravan of Courage, which it's much like how the most recent movies, like its event series on much larger scale and bigger budget. This one, as well as what follows taking place before Return of the Jedi chronologically, it's on a smaller scale, on a more modest budget, equivalent to about 1 million and change in 1980s money. And this first one is functionally a retelling of Swiss Family Robinson with in the Star Wars saga, where there a young girl named Sindel and her older brother Mace must form an alliance with Wicket and the other Ewoks in order to find their parents, Katarine and Jeremit, who wound up getting separated when their ship crashed on the Forest Moon, and it definitely is a pretty strange movie the more I think about it. I mean, and there's a lot of long stretches without any dialogue, again, like what I just saw. But I actually don't mind that about letting the visuals advance the story when there's any dialogue, or at least any narration from Bella Ives, best known her for being in the Sam the Snowman and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Here, the the film was directed by a one John Corty. It was co-written by Bob Carrao. Oh, and also does an okay job of striking a nice little balance of wonder and danger. It's quite an entertaining work, albeit not for the reasons they intended. Count on that. There's also some pretty interesting stories behind the scenes, things of how they had to manage the production around how the how labor laws. I mean, even though Warwick Davis plays the role as Wicket, he was still oh, older than the children were when this was made. He also helped tutor some of the child actors portraying Mason Sindel, and even built classrooms into the living space so they won't fall behind their studies, which is actually pretty nice. And even though this movie is among those that technically falls under the legends of the old expanded universe now, there actually were ideas that actually did get folded back in the main canon. And for instance, the cartoon sprites that they encounter and help aid Sindel and Wicket to who has helped Mace and Wicket to medicinal herbs that he needs for his sister Sindel. Actually, it was done actually a fairly similar way to in the most recent movie, he, which I actually will say legit surprised me. He, I won't say exactly why, but you give an idea about how. Yeah, that's an indicator that much of the show is spinning off from what I just saw is not just going to be going for obvious callbacks like fighting like an alien monster in a pit, but also finding ways to work in details from like a TV movie, which for the longest time actually was out of print. Like how there were, compared to the many times the mainline films and newer spin-offs had gotten released, East, there was apart from there was a couple TV airings, a very a small run VHS release, as well as a DVD release in the year 2004, or which really highlighted the Ewok Adventure branding. And it wasn't until 2021 that the movies were finally added to Disney Plus. And but to make a long story short, or the movie does end with Mason Sindel reuniting with their parents and all as well. For now, the following year in 1985, a second NTA movie he debuted, who'd known as Ewoks: The Battle for Endor, or which actually ends up going down a darker road, and even the story itself was vastly different and from when it was initially conceived. And this time, I'm writing and co-writing and directing duties fall to brothers Jim and Ken Wheat, and also ends up actually getting a bit heavier than his predecessor from the opening scene. I mean, they are this close to finishing the pairs on the ship and getting an off the moon. However, that ends up being quite literally going up in smoke when their whole camp is attacked by marauders who kidnap mostly Ewoks, end up killing most of Sindel's family, functionally leaving them alone survivors in the attack, and the Marauders also haunts a crystal which they believe is magic, despite Jeremit's attempts to tell them otherwise. I mean, wow. They made this for kids? So, as they try to recover the crystal from the Marauders and a witch named Charles, some of them would end up befriending an enigmatic alien named Teak who can move at high speeds. They may not have had the volume or as complex CG as we do now, but they did have the old-fashioned magic of undercranking, and they also had eventually befriended the reclusive elderly man known as Noah, played by Wolfram Brindley, one of the many roles in his distinguished career, who functionally becomes Sindel's surrogate grandfather through the experience. Apparently, this whole idea was because Lucas's daughter at the time was a big fan of classic children's story Heidi of the Alps, and in particular, 1968 film adaptation, which I immediately noticed all similarities on the latest watch. I mean, just don't bring that one up to Jets fans, but just a sore subject. And once again, and though this movie again falls under the Legends Old Expanded Universe, there were quite a few ideas that actually managed to find their way into the new canon Expanded Universe. As it turns out, even though Charles' ultimate fate is being trapped in her bird form, and it turns out that she's actually connected to the Night Sisters, areas who are the ones who helped Ultimol all regain his strength, and among other deeds. And I think people got salty about the acolytes. Fair. And with that in mind, behind the mounts that these guys have, as it turns out, how he many he these creatures has also found their way back into the Mandalorian as well. Oh, the blurgs. Yeah, they're basically a like dewbacks, but with have shorter bodies and a bit more slender limbs. Span. And admittedly, he I do kind of like how he actually has some connections into who the Return of the Jedi, even tricking all the adversaries some other way. Hey, driving back the armor marauders with just as the weapons they made themselves, even using similar drop attacks. And of course, Wicket actually being on a glider, but not being the best at landing it, man. Which actually was done for real, like many things had to be back then. If they had to blow something up or set fire to something, they would do just that. To to be fair, that part of the forest was actually an area that was actually made ideal for making something like this. So the battle is ultimately won, and ultimately, Sindel and Noah leave the moon with Wicket rejoining his tribe. Admittedly, hey, these are not great films by any means. In fact, they often have become something like a punchline of the fandom. But honestly, I've seen worse things to talk about. And heck, I bet if they were made today, they'd probably have something involving the porgs. Who knows? So, while the Ewok Adventures may not be my favorite spin off by any means, I would obviously never put them on the same pedestal I would something like The Mandalorian or Andor or the various animated and spin offs that have been released since. It did, in a weird way, kind of provide an early taste of how big the saga could become, even when it's not focused on the mains. As I keep saying, I will continue to say as long as it continues to be relevant in the conversation. And and while the Jedi may have been about even one part of the saga, it was really other characters that helped turn much Star Wars is today. Hey, and whatever shape that takes going forward, I will definitely be keeping an eye on that however long I can. And I'm also going to be prepping some stuff for when I'm at the coast. In fact, one of them is already ready to go for June. So, oh, I'll definitely be talking about more when I come back. I just had to wait and see what I can store for. That's all for now. May the force be with you all.